Coming up, fallout from the deportation of criminally illegal immigrants continues, and Stephen Miller completely crushes CNN's Kasie Hunt on the issue. The demolition of Kasie Hunt comes at the timestamp that I will put at the bottom of the screen below. Meanwhile, NSA Mike Waltz explains the facts of this case.
Well, number one, our sovereignty and the safety of our citizens is a core national security issue. Number two, this organization, Tren de Agua, has been declared lawfully a foreign terrorist organization from a legal standpoint. And then number three, Laura, I could tell you the average American, the people out there just trying to keep their families safe, when you talk about hundreds of members, tattooed, violent gang members being deported, they're saying, thank you, President Trump. Local law enforcement is saying, thank you, President Trump. Our sheriffs are saying, thank you. At the end of the day, these gang members are an arm of a foreign terrorist organization. They are no different than ISIS.
Waltz lays out the facts about why this bunch is being deported. They are a designated foreign terrorist organization in the same way that ISIS is. And how a judge can deliberately work against the welfare of the American people in favor of illegal criminal terrorists is beyond me. These judges do the judiciary absolutely no favors, and the American people, quite frankly, appreciate what Trump is doing. And then we have AG Pam Bondi on the issue.
Will his order, this temporary restraining order on the Alien Enemies Act, will that be, respected going forward? And where does he get this power to stop the president engaging in national security and foreign policy?
Well, that's it. He's attempting to meddle in national security and foreign affairs, and he can't do it. What he's done is an intrusion on the president's authority. This one federal judge, again, thinks he can control foreign policy for the entire country, and he cannot. And right now we're evaluating our options.
Okay, so the administration may continue doing these flights?
Absolutely. These are foreign terrorists. The president has identified them and designated them as such, and we will continue to follow the Alien Enemies Act.
Attorney General Pam Bondi lays out some of the legalities of this case. The judge, quite frankly, is getting involved in a national security and foreign policy area where really he has no business being. This extends way beyond the ambit of what a simple, single federal judge should be able to do. And at some point, this issue needs to be reformed. It is untenable to be able to judge shop for a single judge out of hundreds that looking for the single judge that will be sympathetic to your cause and cause them to drive your agenda, stopping the administration from doing what, quite frankly, they've been elected to do. If you enjoy this sort of content, please like, share and subscribe. And then we go on to Border Czar Tom Homan.
Like a judge is trying to stop this. Why?
I don't know why. I don't know why any judge would want terrorists returned to the United States. I mean, first of all, the video, what a beautiful thing to see.
It's incredible.
Right? Look, the President Trump, by proclamation, invoked the authorities of the Alien Enemies Act, which he has the right to do, and it's a game changer. And we removed over 200 violent criminals from the United States, just not TDA, but also MS-13. The actions of President Trump made this country safer. Every criminal alien, every criminal public safety threat and national security threat removed from this country makes this country safer.
Homan makes essentially the same point that I did earlier on. It's quite unbelievable, a judge not wanting to protect the American people over and above these criminal terrorists, and Defending the American people is ultimately the fundamental job of a judge. As Homan said, the US is safer for the actions of the president in getting rid of these criminal terrorists from the US. And he continues.
It wasn't until this flight was already in international waters, heading down to El Salvador, that the judge made some comment about returning the flights. We're already in international waters. We're outside the borders of the United States. I'm the border czar. Once you're outside the border, you know, it is what it is. But they're in international waters, already on the way south, close to landing. You know what? We did what we had to do. Remove terrorists, significant public safety threats from the United States by the order of the proclamation by the President of the United States. We did the right thing.
Homan confirms what has already been reported, that when the judge's order came down, these flights were already over international waters. As he said, once over international waters, the issue is out of his, being Tom Homan's, hands. The reality is, it should be out of the judge's hands as well. It is then an international issue, something a federal judge has no jurisdiction over. And then we have a masterclass provided by Stephen Miller, completely befuddling a hapless Kasie Hunt.
Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, is here with me now. Stephen, thanks very much for being in the arena.
Glad to. Thank you.
So you called the judge's order just earlier today, quote, patently unlawful, end quote, and said that it was an assault on democracy itself. Does that mean that the administration is ignoring this order, and might you ignore future court orders that meet the criteria you laid out?
The President of the United States and his administration reserve all rights under the Constitution to conduct national security operations in defense of the United States. The Alien Enemies Act, which was passed into law by the founding generation of this country, men like John Adams, was written explicitly to give the President the authority to repel an alien invasion of the United States. That is not something that a district court judge has any authority whatsoever to interfere with, to enjoin, to restrict, or to restrain any way. You can read the law yourself. There's not one clause in that law that makes it subject to judicial review, let alone district court review.
So, Stephen, when you say that this person has no authority at all, this is how our system works. It starts with these judges and then continues up. At what point does it become, in your view, legal for the justice system to be looking at this and making a judgment? And I fail to see how there's any other way but to start with where we're starting here before you get to eventually the Supreme Court.
Here, Kasie Hunt makes a fundamental error in logic. The simple fact is, not everything that the president does comes under the purview of the courts. For example, if the president goes and cuts his finger and toenails, that's not under the purview of the courts. A ridiculous analogy, I agree. But there are certain things in terms of conduct, for instance, having negotiations with foreign leaders. Though the subject of those negotiations and what was discussed in those negotiations and what might be agreed in those negotiations does not come under the purview of the courts. And there are a variety of other issues. Here, Hunt makes the mistake in thinking that absolutely everything that the administration does comes under the purview of the courts. This is a mistake on her part.
Well, so first of all, there's a term in law, justiciable. This is not justiciable. In other words, this is not subject to judicial remedy. When the president is exercising his Article II powers to defend the country against an invasion or to repel a foreign terrorist that is unlawfully in the country, he's exercising his core Article II powers as commander-in-chief.
Is Venezuela invading the U.S.?
This is a very important point. This is a Title 50 authority. It's a commander-in-chief authority. So just to ask you a simple question, you talk about how the system works. Does a district court judge have the right to direct or enjoin troop movements overseas? Yes or no?
Well, Stephen, my question, if you could answer my question first,
in other words,
is Venezuela invading our country in a way that would apply in this way?
So I'll answer yours and you'll answer mine. Under the terms of the statute, Tren de Aragua is an alien enemy force that has come here, as detailed at length in the proclamation, at the direction of the Venezuelan government. The statute says that a president has the ability to repel an invasion or predatory incursion that is directed by a foreign
state
government.
or a government, right? Are they a state
Yes,
or a government?
this would be. Yes, it is documented that TDA was sent by the Venezuelan government in the proclamation. And here's an even more important point. Under the Constitution, who makes that determination? A district court judge elected by no one, or the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy? The president and the president alone makes a decision of what triggers that determination.
So do you then think we
statute.
are actually at war with Venezuela, the nation state of Venezuela?
You're not hearing me, and you're not understanding me. Read the statute, Alien Enemies Act, 1798. It says if a predatory incursion is perpetrated by a foreign government, so it lists three qualifying actions. It could be an act of war.
It does say in the very beginning there has to be a declared war against a nation or a state. That's what it says.
No, wrong. Look up the statute. It's on my account on social media.
That's actually where we
Everyone can
found
go
it
earlier. Yes, it says or a predatory incursion or an invasion. The statute delineates three criteria for triggering the Alien Enemies Act.
Here you can clearly see from the document that CNN's put up itself about the Act that it's not only if a country has declared war on the United States. If there is a predatory incursion, people can be expelled on the basis of this Act. And obviously when you're getting a whole bunch of criminal terrorists from a certain nation coming into your country, that falls under the ambit of predatory incursion.
One is an act of war, which, by the way, an invasion is an act of war, but put that aside. One is an invasion, which this is. One is a predatory incursion, which this is. So it actually meets all three statutory criteria. But with respect to this particular statute, the proclamation is utilizing the incursion and invasion language in the statute.
So,
but this is a very important
Stephen.
question, because no, hold on. It's a very important question. You said the way our system works is the President of the United States commands the armed forces of the country, commands the foreign policy of the country, and that's subject to district court review. That is fundamentally untrue.
I never said that, Stephen. I did not say.
That is never.
Actually, if you go back to the beginning, you can clearly see that Kasie Hunt did, in fact, say that.
Been true.
This was not a military
a district court judge can no more enjoin the expulsion of foreign terrorists to foreign soil that he can direct the movement of Air Force One, that he can direct the movement of an aircraft carrier, that he can direct Marco Rubio to engage in diplomacy in a country or not.
Do you think the Supreme Court has any say over this or not? Like, does the Supreme Court of the United States have any say over the things that you were just outlining right here?
I believe what the Supreme Court will say is what I just said, which is that the president's conduct here is not subject to judicial review.
Okay, but you are acknowledging that they do, in fact, have a say here.
Well,
once again, this is a complete breakdown in logic by Kasie Hunt. This is equivalent to saying the Supreme Court has a say in what flight plans Air Force One operates under. No, that's not the case. What Stephen Miller here is clearly indicating that yes, it'll go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will say, no, this does not fall under your court's ambit. That is what he's saying. This should never have come up anyway. It would be equivalent to the federal court judge saying, no, I've got to be able to define the flight plans of Air Force One, then makes an order that Air Force One cannot fly without his say-so. That would then go to the Supreme Court. It does not mean that it falls under the ambit of the courts.
Even though you think they may agree with you.
What we are expecting is the Supreme Court to say what has always been the case, which is when the president is using his powers as commander-in-chief, those determinations are not subject to judicial review. In other words, the president's designation of Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization and as an alien enemy are part of his inherent plenary authority. There is no way.
At what point in the system, Stephen,
how are you going to expel?
Hold on.
How are you going to expel illegal alien invaders from our country who are raping little girls, who are murdering little girls, if each and every deportation has to be adjudicated in a district court judge, that means you have no country, it means you have no sovereignty, it means you have no future. It is fundamentally incompatible to have a country and have individual expulsions adjudicated by a single district court judge.
I'm just trying to figure out at what point in the system do you, because what does the Trump administration believe? Because we do have separation of powers in this country. I hear what you're saying.
Yes,
you're saying
separation
the district
of powers.
court does not
This is the judiciary
have authority.
interfering
Stephen,
in
let me finish.
the executive function.
Let me
That is
finish.
the separation
Okay.
of powers. That is the separation of powers.
Did you ignore the judge's order here because you thought you could?
So the judge's order and the actions taken by the Departments of Defense, Justice, and Homeland Security are not in conflict. And the Department of Justice has been clear that they are not in conflict. But
so you think that you did go along with the order that the judge put out? You do not think that the Trump administration defied this order?
As the Justice Department said, there is no conflict between the judge's order and the actions taken by the departments I just listed. But I'm making a deeper and more fundamental point.
Yeah.
The district
so,
court
yeah, I mean, if you
has
don't have
no
to follow it,
ability.
why didn't you?
The district court has no ability to in any way restrain the president's authorities under the Alien Enemies Act or his ability to conduct the foreign affairs of the United States. Let me paint a picture for you. President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio had engaged in intensive diplomacy to obtain a bilateral security agreement with the nation of El Salvador. If a district court judge can enjoin that bilateral security agreement, then we do not have a democracy.
Stephen, you've made your argument.
We do not have a foreign policy.
We've heard you say this. Did you ignore, did the administration ignore the order from the district judge? It's a simple question.
I've answered it. I've answered it because the Department of Justice has made a filing in the court. But let me make another point. The judge, in this case, put the lives of every single person on those aircraft at risk. Did he know how much fuel was in those planes? Did he know the flight conditions? Did he know the weather conditions? Did he know how many crew hours? Did he know the need for crew rest? Did he know any of that? No. This judge violated the law. He violated the Constitution. He defied the system of government that we have in this country.
Because that does seem to be what you're arguing here.
These same district court judges didn't do a damn thing to stop Joe Biden from flooding this nation with millions of illegal aliens. These district court judges didn't issue any injunctions to save the lives of Jocelyn Nungary or Laken Riley or anyone else.
The federal courts. Is that what you're saying?
Wow, Hunt is not very bright. She has just gone on and saying, yes, you've made the points, I get it. Clearly, she doesn't. Because there are some issues where federal courts have jurisdiction and they quite clearly, through the separation of powers, have within their powers the ability to stop an administration behaving in a certain way. With other things, such as this one, they don't have the power. She seems to think that they either have power everywhere or they have power nowhere. It's a ludicrous assertion.
What I'm saying is that what you said, there's a separation of powers. The judiciary exercises judgment and relief.
I don't speak for the White House. You are here to speak
I will do.
You're here to speak for the White House. I just want you to answer that
it.
one simple question.
I am. Ready? Here we go. Under a proper reading of the Constitution, district court judges provide relief to individual plaintiffs seeking relief. District court judges do not have the authority, as a general matter, to enjoin the functioning of the executive branch. But their authority is at its lowest point when the president is exercising his powers as commander-in-chief. And I asked you a question, you never answered it. Can a judge enjoin troop movements overseas? Can a district court judge enjoin troop movements overseas?
Stephen,
yes or no?
I am not going to get into the
Just say no, and then you'll know that I'm right.
This is a
Just
separate
say no,
question.
and you'll know that.
So here Hunt completely dodges the question because, quite frankly, she knows that by answering this question, she totally destroys her entire argument. Quite frankly, she has not done very well here. She has been going on an ideological bent and she has been absolutely crushed. You can see it in her face that she knows she's been defeated. And on to another, even more ridiculous person in terms of what their view is. Here is Whoopi Goldberg on The View.
Keep your eyes open, y'all. Because if they can just come up and take somebody because they've made a decision that you're supposed to be that person, any one of us could find ourselves being deported to some country.
Don't give them any ideas,
there.
girl.
Well, listen, you know, it is very clear to me that if we don't continue to say, we want, listen, I understand you want to clean out all the bad stuff. I get it.
This is just typical leftist view type politics from Whoopi Goldberg. The clue for Goldberg in terms of the idiocy of her panic on this issue is the very name of the act under which the deportations are being conducted. It is the Alien Enemies Act. For Whoopi, well, she might be an enemy of Trump's, but presumably she's not an enemy of America's. But even if she was, she's a citizen, not an alien. So the law still hardly applies to her. Now, what do you think of the masterful display by Stephen Miller? Please let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.